And over the period of, the first 5, 6, 7 years, I got into program development and trying to make the educational system better than it is, and mostly focusing on critical thinking skills, motivation, student-centered learning. Back then, that was kind of a new concept. When I went to school, it was all about a teacher lecturing and us memorizing things and repeating it. So that was my start. And then over the years, I got into civic development, coaching. I worked for the past 15 or so years. I worked as an executive coach for business executives and small businesses and government and non-government organizations, etc. And after the pandemic, I felt I needed to go back to my roots and go back into the actual working with teenagers. And here I am now with Ascend Now.
Yeah, what a lovely marathon. And yeah, we're all glad that we're having you here. So yeah, thank you for all your beautiful journey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. And I'm Laura Toma. I'm a learning and development expert. I've transitioned into learning and development 7 years ago. I started my career in advertising and communication, and since I've made this transition, I've been fortunate enough to work with organizations from all over the world, and to be able to train and design content and develop learning programs for refugees, for CEOs, for kids, for adults. And one of the main partners in the journey in the past couple of years has been Ascend Now, where I've been it's been great to be a teacher and work with students, but also to design and develop content. So I'm humbled to be here today and to be able to share some of my learnings from my entire experience, but also as a fellow Ascend Now teacher with everyone who's joining us.
That's awesome. Thank you, Laura. And I'm sure we're going to share all of our experiences together and see how we could drive high quality content so that we could enhance the level of our students and keep them motivated to embark their journey and their projects further. I would also like to introduce myself. I'm Kyrillos Hanna, and I'm always a fan of startups and entrepreneurship. I hold a bachelor degree in construction engineering, but who works with his degree anyway? No one, yeah. Okay. And I also have a minor in entrepreneurship. And prior to my graduation, I worked at a VLab, that is a startup level incubator, and I was a marketeer there. And I was an undergrad and a graduate teaching assistant in entrepreneurship courses. Prior to my graduation, I joined Dell Technologies as sales engineer, but I didn't like corporate, and the passion for startups kept igniting inside me. So that's why I joined Ascend Now to deliver high quality content to the students all over the globe, and to change the academic journey to our students. So yeah. All right, so for today, the topic is really interesting. It's how to keep our students always motivated, and we'll see how we can embark this journey if any challenges occurs in the middle of it. So as a start with part one, let's say that we have a persona of a student who is motivated, but he's not highly motivated. He's sometimes motivated. So it's as if he's a seasonal player. Sometimes he's on and other times he's off. What do you think? What's the best way to deal with such type of student who is motivated at times, but on other times he might cut corners, he might slack off a little bit. So what do you think, Mari, should we do in this scenario?
Well, I think all of our students come to us with different levels of motivation. They might come to us super highly motivated in the beginning. They might be completely unmotivated. And as teachers, as coaches, as mentors, we need to get to know them right from the start and understand what actually motivates them, not just the level of motivation they have, but why they're there. If you don't mind moving to the next slide, Kira, please. So when we talk about motivation, we need to understand their motivation, what the source of their motivation is. And we usually have intrinsic motivation, which is internal reasons why we're motivated. And we have extrinsic or external factors that drive us to pursue something. And generally, when our students come to us, they'll actually have a blend of both, just like adults. It's very rare that you find somebody who is just completely 100% internally motivated. So for our students, some of the sources of external motivation, extrinsic motivation, might be rewards and incentives. So, and I think that's true for all of us. You know, we're motivated by the prospect of earning a reward or some sort of a prize, maybe a scholarship, academic credit. Maybe they get academic credit for doing the passion project. A big one for majority of high school students might be college applications. They can put their project on a college application, and that can set them apart from, you know, other applicants, give them higher chances of being accepted, etc. Then a big one for all of us is recognition and praise. And students, teenagers, adults, children are often motivated by the prospect of receiving recognition or praise from either their peers, their teachers, or other adults. You know, when they're teenagers, the recognition they get from their peers might be very different than what they get from their teachers and other adults. But, you know, for me, for example, I come from a generation where we raised our children to, you know, with a good girl, good boy, we would get praise for doing something. And for me personally, I grew up to be a people pleaser. And so for me, knowing that I will get that kind of praise, that, you know, if I try really hard, I'll get that praise and somebody will say, good girl, you've done well. That actually became internal motivation for me, not so much the external stimuli, but internal motivation. And some of our students might still have that. We're moving, you know, in raising children, we're moving slowly away from that, but your students might still be motivated by that external source of getting that praise. Some of our students are very competitive, so they're motivated by the prospect of competing with their peers or other students in that field. And Ascend Now, actually, we use Bullpen to kind of satisfy that source of motivation. And then a big one for a significant number of students, I think, is external pressure. So they might feel pressure from parents, teachers, other adults to pursue a particular passion or even a project. So those are some of the external sources of motivation or sources of external motivation that our students might have coming in. And then the other part would be internal intrinsic motivation. And those would be personal interest and enjoyment. So when our students go to school, they get to take classes that are mandated by the school with very little freedom to select their you know, electives and what they actually want to do. And a passion project gives them an opportunity to pursue something because they have a genuine interest in the topic and find it enjoyable or fulfilling. Some of our students might be interested in personal growth. That's what might motivate them. They strive to be better. They want to develop new skills. They want to gain new knowledge. They want to challenge themselves. They might, go to school, go to their IB, go to APs, but still feel like they want to grow in other ways. Impact is another one that's actually really important. And I think that for all teenagers, at least when I was a teenager, we all wanted to change the world. And every generation of teenagers that I've known wants to change the world. But I'm seeing that more and more with the new generations. They really do care about making the world a better place, making their community a better place, leaving that impact. So by pursuing a passion project, they feel like they have a chance to do that. Another source of intrinsic motivation that I think is important to keep in mind would be autonomy and control. As I said earlier, they don't really have much autonomy or control over what they have to study in school, but the passion project gives them a chance to choose what to do. And then there is, creativity and self-expression. Some of our students, I have one that she's so creative, and her passion project allows her to express that creativity in ways that she just doesn't have an opportunity to do in school, in her life, etc. So these are some of the areas that our students might be coming from, their motivation might be coming from. And it's really important for us as teachers or mentors or coaches to get to know our students from the beginning, to find out what it is that motivates them, because we can then use it we can play up on it, make them more motivated by using what appeals to them, what their original source is, and also maybe building up on the sources, on other reasons why they might be motivated. Now, I oftentimes when I talk about motivation, people ask me, well, is one better than the other? Should I be using this extrinsic, like, should I be playing up on the fact that this will help you get in college, or is that wrong? Is it better to encourage their intrinsic motivation? And there is really, both are equally important. Now, intrinsic motivation is in a sense better because it actually it lasts longer. It helps them stick with goals longer. Extrinsic motivation can be very effective in the short term because it provides those external rewards and incentives for behaviors. And it's also super helpful if you need to remotivate a student that's, disengaged, or motivate the student that's reluctant in the beginning. I've had a few students that that came to me because their parents made them, and they really are not interested. So you can't tap into their intrinsic motivation at that point. You have to use extrinsic motivation, give them little awards, give them something to work towards, some extrinsic thing to get them engaged, and then build up on it. So one is not better than the other. It's just that intrinsic motivation can lead to higher levels of creativity and innovation, and can last longer, and can actually feed on itself, because if their motivation is to make an impact, and as they see the little bits of impact that they're making, they will want to do more and more and more. And so it can kind of become this positive vicious circle, if there is such a thing. So basically that's about motivation. And I think that for us, it's just really, really important to keep checking in with our students, seeing where they are with their motivation, changing things, looking for things, because anything, when it goes on and on and on, it eventually stops being effective. So, you know, if I'm constantly dangling a carrot in front of my student, eventually student's going to lose interest in that carrot and want some cabbage. So switching things around, finding ways to keep them motivated, whether it's sometimes, you know, saying, hey, great job, you know, giving that praise, and other times reminding them of the impact that they're making. So switching it around can be very powerful in motivating students. So I am sure that Laura has something to add on the topic of what we do in the beginning and how we get them interested in the project.
Thank you, Mariana. And for those who are joining us, we would love to make this an interactive session. Kiro has posted 2 questions in the chat, and we'd love to hear from your experiences. You know, what those challenges at the beginning of the relationship and building rapport to students look like, and then also share, you know, what works, how you've managed to get students motivated and engaged and excited about the work that they're doing. And really what I want to talk about in the first part of building rapport or building a relationship at the beginning is a framework that I've used it with many students in Ascend now and beyond, and it's very, very helpful. And you'll have a link to the framework in the title. You'll have the slides, so you'll be able to watch the video and get even more better understanding on how to apply this framework. And I loved you know, Mariana's encouragement about getting to know the students, with some of them, what I've noticed is that there are different levels of self-awareness. So some are very you know, they know what they want, they know what they're passionate about, they know the impact they want to create. Some may be less aware of their passions or their skills. And my cat approves if you can hear him on the background. So what the Ikigai framework helps with, and you know, this has been a bit of a buzzword, so there was a trend, there are a lot of books written about it, but this framework helps is to look at different components and to allow the student to look at things from different perspectives. So firstly, to look at themselves, at, you know, what they love and what they are good at. So this comes, you know, thinking about even the smaller things. I remember a student who came to our sessions. She didn't, again, she was pushed by her parents. She didn't know why she was there. But we started talking about the things that she loves. And, you know, she loved makeup. She was really good at baking. So that gives you, you know, a common ground, a starting point to be able to talk about, or at least to be able to build on. And then looking at what the world needs and what you can be paid for. So these are the external parts. So thinking about, you know, the challenges that the world is facing. So when you're thinking about what the world needs, this is also a good opportunity to start talking about problems. And as we know, every business solves a problem. So it helps seeing, you know, what topics are out there, how they respond to them, what they become passionate about, and what you can be paid for. This is very helpful in the entrepreneurship courses because you're thinking about how you can, you know, how can you develop a service or a product that customers would pay for. Now, that is the goal, that is the journey, to be able to have all four. There are adults who don't have all four of them at the same time. So there isn't this shouldn't be used as a way to pressure them to figure everything out. But you can start your project with them, or they can start their project at the intersection of what are you good at and what you can be paid for. That can be, a good starting point, because there's something where there already is that beautiful combination of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And then you can add a layer of impact. You can see, if the business idea or if the passion project is something that can become sustainable, or or there's parts of the business where you can be considerate of different groups. So it helps a lot to play around with this, and it will help the student reflect. It will help you get to know them better, and it can be, that inception for different ideas and how to develop the passion project, or the business ideas. And it's also a good thing to do this at the beginning. And whenever you're struggling with them, and we'll talk about the challenges that come along the way in the next part. But it's also helpful to save this and revisit it from time to time, especially in those moments of challenges. And I think that's our that's the end of part one. And we wanted to debrief the answers to the two questions. And thank you so much, Priya, for sharing an answer. And I'm going to assume this is a success story, so a technique that has been proven successful in getting students engaged at the beginning, which is to connect with their experiences and work with their examples. And I absolutely love this. And to build on it, when I was doing in-person workshops on innovation entrepreneurship in Dubai, a lot of the girls in the classroom were fans of the Kylie Jenner's makeup brand, which is something that I'm not interested in. I was not passionate about, but it was something that got them excited. It was something they knew about. So I was able to ask a lot of questions and help them share and help them to translate what they liked about that particular brand into what we were discussing about entrepreneurship and innovation. Mariana, anything that you want to add based on this answer, or maybe some other insights you want to share before we move on?
I think we're okay to move on in the interest of timing. And in the second part, Hiro?
Yeah, so I now got to understand the importance of motivation, but I actually have another question. Suppose that the student really got motivated at the beginning, but in the middle he faced some difficulties or challenges that has actually demotivated him. So he stopped working again on the project. I know this might be a little tough, but like, what's the best scenario to deal with a student who really got motivated at the beginning, but because of many challenges on the way that stumbled him, and he got demotivated to continue? So what do you think, Mary, might be a good way to move forward with such a student?
Right. So when I first start with my students, I always set this relationship where they're being treated as an adult, as a client, which, they really love that. And I tell them this is no longer school, this is no longer simulated environment. We're doing something in the real world, real life, and there might be challenges along the way. I tell them, from the beginning, and let's do the best we can and see, as we move through the project, we might have to adjust. And one of the things that I do at the very beginning with them is I really take the time, even though it might seem like taking time for a full session, to go through various skills that they will need or gain through, doing their entrepreneurship project or doing their passion project. And we go through these skills. We analyze each one, explain why it's important. I have them self-assess, ask them which skills they think they're the strongest in, which ones they might need work on. We talk about that as well as mindset. We'll get to that in just a second. And so what this allows me is, as we move through the project and we come into challenges, it allows me to go back and use these skills, the discussion about skills and mindset, to overcome these challenges. I remind them of the conversation that we had about project planning and real life impact, that, a lot of the times we start and we don't know what real world will actually give us. And we talk about collaboration and how can we maybe tap into people around us to help us overcome whatever challenge it is. We talk about problem solving and creative problem solving, which is a crucial, skill to have in pretty much anything in life. So we go back to these things, and I say, remember, when we started, we talked about these skills, and look, this challenge, while it's totally horrible that we have a challenge, and I know you're not happy, but look, it's not all that bad. It's helping you develop your communication skills. It's helping you develop your creativity, your creative problem solving, etc. So let's see how we can use these skills to overcome this challenge. Now, we also talk about the mindset. If you don't mind moving to the next slide, Kira. When we first start, when we first start, we talk about creative confidence. We talk about empathy, resilience, learning from failure, embracing ambiguity, and then learning by doing. And this mindset discussion really helps, at least me, when we face these challenges, we talk about this mindset. We talk about adaptability and how, we thought it would be one thing, but that we have to work on our adaptability and change things around in order to overcome the challenge. We talk about the importance of flexibility. Okay, we thought it was this. Let's be flexible. Let's change it around. Let's change the venue. Let's change the date, whatever it is that we need to change. And I focus on, hey, remember, this is helping you develop this mindset, develop this skill. Then perseverance and persistence. And that's one of my favorite ones. And I always talk about it whenever they feel like giving up, or I can see that they're about to give up because it's just not going and they've reached that wall. I ask them, I'll pick depending on, by this time I know them, so I'll know what they'll respond the best to. So I'll ask them, do you know who Walt Disney is? And they'll say yes. I say, do you know that he was fired from his job at a newspaper early on in his career? They said that he lacked imagination. Or I'll say, do you know who Steven Spielberg is? He was rejected from school, from film school 3 times. Or Oprah Winfrey, or, Bill Gates, for example. He dropped out of Harvard, and in order to pursue a business, then that failed, and he had to close that failing business. this is Bill Gates. And the business was called Trap of Data. So I use these examples. I ask them, do you know who somebody that I know they'll know is? And they say yes. And then I'll say, do you know who Thomas Vellinati is? And they go, no. You've never heard of him? No. Well, yeah, because, he came to a challenge and just gave up. He didn't persevere. He wasn't persistent. He didn't keep trying. And so, they'll laugh, but they'll get the message, I'll also might discuss, like, for example, Bill Gates has a whole story how that failing business actually helped him and his partner build Microsoft and make it what it is now. So, we talk about learning from failure. Embracing challenges as a learning opportunity. There's this article about Jeff Bezos that I share with my students when we get to that point that talks about his many failures. Believe it or not, Jeff Bezos had many failures, and it actually looks at those failures, what happened, and then how he overcame it, and what people or businesses can learn from that. So, those are the things that we do. And then we also, at that point where they have challenges, they don't feel they can overcome them, it's good to go back to setting goals. At the beginning of the project, you've set some goals. Maybe now it's time to revise the goals and also chunk them up into smaller bits to remotivate them. Because if you set smaller goals that are a little easier to achieve, that impact of taking action can help them move forward, can help remotivate them. So, and we can talk about this at length later, but I always use a SMART goal standard or format. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. I have them fill out a form. We fill it out together, and we set these goals that are easily achievable and build up. And before I know it, we've solved the challenge. We've figured out the problem. And then we can celebrate the success, because overcoming a challenge, yeah, they'll feel great, but we should actually formally celebrate that. Like, yay, okay, we did it. Let's go, let's move on to the next goal, but let's acknowledge that we did great in this goal. So that's basically, I do spend time when I'm getting to know them while we're bonding and stuff to go over these 2 slides and talk at length of this and do self-analysis. Helps me get to know them, but it also gives me the tools to use when they get demotivated, when they come to challenges and just want to give up and everything seems horrible. I show them how these challenges are actually learning opportunities, and sure, they're not succeeding right now at the passion project, but they are succeeding overall in life and getting better. Yes, the mindset. I almost forgot, and I will actually let Laura talk more about that. But we also discussed growth mindset, and we keep coming back to the growth mindset whenever they reach that point of wanting to give up or feel like they're failing. And so I remind them, we talked about growth mindset. We need to approach challenges with a positive and constructive attitude instead of giving up and feeling discouraged. Let's do this. Let's get out of this fixed mindset that we can't change anything and into growth mindset. And that really helps. Sometimes you have to be their cheerleader and push them along on that path of growing. Yeah. So Laura, I'm sure that you have many valuable things to add.
Thank you. I think what you're noticing both in what Mariana and I are sharing is how important it is to have very strong foundations in working with the students. So having these valuable conversations at the beginning of the interaction, and the tool that I would like to share with you is the design thinking framework. And this is really helpful because it helps to map out what is going to happen. So there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be a lot of ambiguity that's, they're going to have to deal with, and we have to work with them in terms of, what idea am I going to develop, or problem I'm going to solve? How is the implementation going to look like? So any tools, any processes, any frameworks that helps to map out what's going to happen and to reduce that ambiguity from our end is really it really helps the students to know at least these are the stages that I'm going to go through, and also to assess where they are in the journey. And the design thinking process is a user-centered framework. It helps to come up with solutions, whether they're products or services or processes that solve a real-life problem for a group of real people. And it starts with getting to know the user, defining the problem from their perspective, coming up with ideas, prototyping the solution, and then testing it back with the user. And one thing that's sort of missing from the slide is that every process has a starting point. So it can be a question, it can be a challenge. If for example, students are finding it difficult to pick a topic, pick a problem, right? If you're using the Ikigai framework, when you're thinking about what the world needs, this is a really good place to introduce the UN Sustainability Development Goals, because at least that gives you a starting point of all the big problems that the world is facing right now. And they can choose one goal, which can be the way to kickstart this process and to start things. And design thinking process is also iterative, and that means that you're going to go through some of these stages a couple of times. And I think this sometimes is a challenge because what we're doing is very, and I love that, Mariana sets that the tone with them is like, this is not school, but we see those mindsets and those patterns that they have from school coming into our sessions, right? So I have an answer, and that's the final one. I came up with an idea, that's the idea. So sometimes the challenge is to, for us to take a step back and say, that's a brilliant first idea. Let's dive deeper. Let's explore more. Let's find, in the ideation stage, if you go through our entrepreneurship curriculum, we challenge them to come up with 50 solutions. And that, it's something that you need to, they need to practice that growth mindset. They need to practice that resilience and challenge themselves. The other tool that's really helpful, and Kiro, if you can please help me with the next slide, thank you so much, is the value proposition canvas. And this is something that you can use at the beginning of the work for a passion project, where you're looking at a customer, at a potential user, and then you're designing a solution that really works for their needs. And again, you have the link in the title for a video explaining the framework. And what this helps with is, firstly, one of the main skills that Ascend now wants to develop in the students is research. So this is a very helpful place where a helpful point in the journey where they have to do primary research, they have to do secondary research, and also be creative, but also practical, right? So the solution has to be something new, but it also has to match the data points that they found in their research. And how is this related to challenges? Is that sometimes we work with students on certain ideas, and they may face a challenge when it comes to implementation. It can be a technical challenge, or it can be a response from the audience. And then the question is, what do we do now? And having gone through this exercise helps you, because at that point you can go back and say, well, let's go back to what the user said. Let's go back to the insights we've gathered at the beginning. Let's see how we can use that information and pivot. Another challenge, that some of the teachers from the schools that we work with said, but what if they have a bad idea and they're very attached to it? And those teachers were mindful about being the bearers of bad news. So again, having this tool really, really helps you to coach them through that process, to be like, well, this is not about what I think. This is not about what you think. What did the user say? What is their problem? Empathize with them, put yourselves in their shoes. What exactly do they need? Do they want? So again, it helps with having this objective place to come back when you're having those challenges about real life impact. And the final slide that we have for part 2 is, if you don't mind, Kiro, changing the slide. Thank you so much. So this is a video on a growth mindset. We don't have the time to watch it now, but this is very helpful to review. It compares growth mindset with fixed mindset. And out of this video, what we've done is we've curated a handout that, like Mariana said, will help in that conversation of growth mindset at the beginning of the conversation. It's actually something they can fill in, and it's like a commitment they're making to themselves. And also, one of the things that it is in this framework is, when I face challenges, I will. So they're committing to certain behaviors, they're committing to certain actions that they will take when they're facing challenges. And what is very helpful for them to know, and for us as teachers to know as well, challenges will come. It's not about, doing everything possible for those things not to happen. They will come. Some will be some will be bigger, some will be smaller, but there will be challenges. But having all of these things in place gives you the tools to be able to deal with those situations, and also gives them the comfort that even if they don't have the answer, they have the ways to find it. Mariana, did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it really well. And I'm looking at our chat. It doesn't look like our attendees have had challenges. I'm not surprised. Somehow I missed Kabir's message in the chat earlier. And if that's what they do, I'm not surprised that there's not many answers to this question, because when you set up things the way we've discussed, the way Kabir and Priya said, connecting the experiences, show them respect, tie it into their personal interests and goals, then all of this actually comes naturally, or more or less naturally. So unless Kira wants to share how he overcame challenges, or you, Laura, additional, then I think we can move on to the next part, because I know Kira had another question for us.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. And for our last milestone today, let's say that we got the student to overcome those challenges. And And I was wondering if there is any helpful tips or tricks to wrap up the project and to further motivate the student to run further projects and future projects. And that would be our last milestone for today's webinar.
Yeah, so when we finish the project, obviously everybody's super happy. We finished the project, but yeah, there's a question of what then, because there's also that letdown of it's over. You just spent all this time and energy on it, and now it's done. And unless we formalize it, we formalize that end of the project, it can be demotivating for moving forward. And what we want is the opposite. We want them to do more passion projects. We want them to be more engaged. After finishing successfully, we want them to want to do more. And so some of the things that I do, and I do this actually, I'm in a process of doing it in real life for a project of mine that just wrapped up and going into the next phase, is one of the most important things, Kira, if you would please go to the next slide, is that I have a formal reflecting session where we reflect. And I do this in real life with everything that I do. At the end of every lesson, we should reflect, talk about what went well, what didn't go so well, what would you do differently next time? If you were to do this again, what would you do differently? So identifying lessons learned, just having this really open discussion where we reflect. And we both reflect. I also share from my standpoint as a teacher, as a mentor, what went well for me, what I would have done differently. I, open myself to feedback from them, give them feedback. So it's a really lovely way to wrap up a project. Then, I encourage my students to share with others. Hopefully we've done the bullpen. Hopefully, our project has already been shared. The completion of the project leads to sharing. But I encourage them to tell others. I might actually do it myself and, post something on Instagram and tag them, and then ask my friends and family to jump in and comment so that, they can see how other people that they don't know are actually celebrating their success. Creating a sense of legacy, for them, for all of us, we really kind of want to leave a legacy. They're just not realizing yet that this project is that important and that it can actually be their legacy. So helping them, encouraging them to think how this project can have a lasting impact and be their legacy, and helping them discover that can really motivate them to do more of that. And then also connecting to future goals or with future goals, looking at how this project can have a lasting impact beyond this. So how is this work relevant to their future? What they can do to build on that project. So this is sort of a gateway into the next project. If I help them connect to future goals, we can kind of sneak in, oh, there's another project to be done there. So, encouraging them to do more. And finally, we celebrate. We find a way to celebrate. We might have a, short virtual party. We might, if we can't have a short virtual party, I'll have a 2-person party where I bring confetti and, streamers and whatnot, and just have a little quick celebration. So whatever it is that makes them happy, gives them that, and that goes back to that external, motivation of rewards and praise. I make sure that we celebrate the completion of the project. How about you, Laura? What do you do with when you're done with a project?
First, I just want to say I want to be your student because I never had a teacher bring confetti to any class or a course to celebrate our achievements. And what I want to talk about is, I think, is supportive of one of the things you've shared, and this idea of sharing their ideas, sharing their success. And this is where storytelling is very important, and this is a technique you can use. I mean, there are techniques that you can use related to storytelling and preparing for the bullpen, and preparing for any presentation, in designing the branding or the marketing of their passion project. And you have a bit of data on the slide about storytelling, but this is one of the most natural things that we do. This is how we learn when we're kids. This is how we communicate. We tell stories on a regular basis. So it's very, very helpful to coach them to first, like you said, Mariana, to encourage them to tell the story of what they've done, but also give them a structured way to be able to further that impact into the world. Because I think this is one of the great things when you're closing a project, is to find a way to maintain that impact. And if Kiro, if you could help with moving the slides. And this is a very, very helpful framework to get started. There's more in the entrepreneurship curriculum that we have. But this helps them really think about, making this concise. So they need to tell a story about something so that they can. So what is this, what is the story really about? And then what is it, that they want to accomplish? And it can be, when we're celebrating, at the end, it can be, I need to tell a story about the things that I've learned, so that I can maybe encourage others to learn them as well. We have a couple of examples on the following slides. So I need to, these are stories, these are examples for using the storytelling framework, right? I need to tell a story about my leadership skills so that I can get a promotion. Maybe I need to tell, like I mentioned, a story about all the skills I developed and all the things I learned so that I can get into the college that I want, right? We're coming back to our initial conversation of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Maybe that extrinsic external reward is that they talk about their passion project in order to get into the university of their choice. I think we have one more example, please, on the next slide. Or storytelling can help them in furthering that impact into the world. So being able to tell a story about a not-for-profit they volunteer for, so that they can inspire others to donate money to the cause. So helping them to craft their stories and to be able to share and to talk about, what they've done is very important, from their friends to their teachers to their families to maybe potential customers, users, and partners. And to think about, even if the passion project doesn't turn into a business that they're going to manage forever and ever, it's still helpful to talk about it and to think about how they can tell more stories, basically how they can create more passion projects.
Very good.
I think we have a couple of minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, Thank you, Laura, and I second you on this part regarding stories, because I feel that students and us, we cannot like we always conceptualize our lives inside a story, and that's why the story we should be telling ourselves must be motivating. And I'm sure all kids love stories, from bedtime stories till they graduate. They always live inside a story, and that's why stories are always an important key um, to motivation and to keep on the momentum going. So yes, it's time for any questions that have been asked by the attendees, but I can't see any. But feel free to share any of your successful stories with your students, or if you have any difficulties with any sort, we're happy to have a couple of minutes for Q&A.
Well, while we wait for the audience to ask questions, I have one question that I'd like to throw out to Laura and the audience, or anyone else that would like to respond. But what do you do when you apply everything we discussed and the student's still not responding or doing the work? Have you ever had that situation? I know I have.
Yeah, I haven't. I think it's something very common because I feel that with the youth, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of conflicting schedules and things that they have to do, and I think that they sometimes get lost along the way. And I think at the time, there's different techniques. Thank you, Kabir, very, very much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Kabir.
for staying with us. I think there's different things, that you can do. And here's where a lot of flexibility is helpful, is taking a step back and trying to understand, what is the cause for what is happening? Is there a lack of understanding? Is there a lack of time? Is it because they're stressed out about their exam? So trying to find the cause for what is happening, and then trying to be flexible. I know I was working with a group of students and they had this brilliant idea, but they were not doing the homework, and it was very difficult to advance with their project. So one of the things we'd done then was to start doing the work during the session itself, and that helped them. At the same time, I think there's so much you can do and there's so much you can try. But at some point, if you've done the best you could, if you've brought people along, I think, engaging with other teachers, engaging with Ariana to get Ethan or Ethan, they're both very good at being creative, at creative problem solving. So making different suggestions, using the WhatsApp, using the groups that we have to get advice. And if you try everything and you practice empathy and you are there for your students, if it's not working after all of these efforts, I think it's okay to let go. Because if it's not working, it's not working. And I think because we're so passionate, when we're coming into this and we want, and we can see their potential, we can see how successful they are, we can see how great their ideas are. But if there is really that strong feeling of not wanting to do that, I think we have for ourselves, we need to be able to have that option to let it go.
Right, I agree. I think that everything we talked about in today's session applies to us as well. If we look at the students as our passion project, we get demotivated because we're, running into brick walls. We have challenges that we need to overcome and apply those skills and the mindset and all that. We need to celebrate the successes that we have when we overcome a challenge. But eventually, yeah, if all else fails, I mean, I will, before that last thing, I will have a conversation with the student and say, hey, when you're at school, they call your parents. We agreed at the beginning of our work together that we will be equals and work as adults and that I will treat you as an adult. So if you're an adult, I'm not going to call your parents, but I am going to tell you that we obviously are not working well together and that perhaps we need a change. So would you like me to speak to my coordinator about getting a different coach? If I'm not, I turn it on me. I say, obviously I'm failing you. You're not, responding well to me. So perhaps working with somebody else will be better for you. And that generally, I've actually never had a student say, yes, I would love a new coach. But, that generally works. But I think that everything we talked about today applies to us as well. It's just that they're our passion project rather than the external passion project.
Yep, I agree, Mary. I just have one last question that popped out. It's regarding bonding with the students. So generally, how do you bond with a student? And the thing is that you might have just around 2 to 4 times per month for these sessions. So like, how do you bond with the students, considering that you only have 1 hour during 1 month and you can just meet him for 3 to 4 times per month? So what are some tips and tricks to keep this bond and to keep on connected with them?
Okay, I'll start. Well, I make sure to take time at the beginning of every session to check in with them, follow up on what we talked about. At the end of every session, I ask them, what's coming up, what's, etc. I take notes. I have like a file for each one of my students, as I do for each one of my clients. So before our session, I reviewed the file. I see, if they've had a test, if they were worried about something. So I lead into the session asking, following up on that, asking what else has happened, have that little chit chat. And, in my experience, that makes them feel as if I care, and I do care. But it shows them that I care. If they have if I know they have a test coming up, I will actually send them a WhatsApp message. I'll set a reminder, to send them a WhatsApp message to say good luck, let me know how it went. So I keep that, even though we might meet twice a month, I keep those lines of communication and I show them in every session that I actually care about what's going on in their life. I ask questions, I let them tell me a story. And sometimes we are off topic. We might not spend the full session talking about the topic because they need to tell me about something else. And I think that human connection, if I spend those 15 minutes letting them tell me about something that's on their mind, that's, important to them, we'll make up for those 15 minutes later on, because once they've, that bond will help me actually be more productive and move on. So what about you, Laura? Anything?
I think all of that sounds wonderful, and I think just being thoughtful and everything that you've said. Again, I want to be your student. I think the one thing I want to add to that is allowing them to teach you something. from time to time. So I sometimes, ask questions like to learn a word or two in their native language, or, talk about Gen Z slang, and, just give them, that space to be themselves and to show their passion and to, model that, learning process, right? So it's not, I think, teacher student has always been perceived as a top-down relationship, but it's just human connection, and it's actually like a two-way street. So that helps because, they get to be enthusiastic and they're like, oh, my teacher didn't know this and now they know, and look at I taught them that. So it gives them that, that sense of pride, and it shows that you're open to them, and yeah, I think that definitely helps with enhancing the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And I just wanted also to share one last thing before we wrap up. I think that have worked with me is that I try to find a common interest between me and the student. And what I found that such a common interest, we keep on hitting and chatting around it. And by time, this interest actually bridge any chasm that happened in the communication. So yeah, common interests are always a good way to keep on the flow and to keep on the bond ignited. So yeah.
Very
All
true.
right. I guess we're just on time and we're finished. And I would like to thank you, Mary and Laura, for making time, for all the attendees for their time and for their sharings. It was really wonderful to have you all here to grow together and learn from one another and from our experiences. So I'd like to take these moments to thank you all for attending. Thank you, Laura and Mary as well.